Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France, and of course you good old boys in Canada. You know we love you in Canada. We also love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. Thanks for following Big C Sports. But Big C, there's no one we love more than you good old boys down south, in the land of the free, in the home of the brave, on a beautiful April the 4th, 2018. Big C, how's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, today is one of the most somber days in black history in America. 50 years ago today, the late Reverend Martin Luther King was assassinated at the Lorraine Hotel in Memphis, Tennessee, where he led a march for equality and injustice in America, where he was fighting for sanitation workers in a city that he didn't even live in.
Yeah.
They were working under Jim Crow law, basically for free labor.
Yeah.
You know, they were making less than $2 an hour under Jim Crow law, working in unsafe and unhealthy conditions in the South.
Yeah.
But he fought for equality for all people, Charlton, not just African Americans, for all people. He sought equality throughout America, throughout the world. And, you know, tragically, his life was brought to an end at the age of 38 years of age, Charlton. But when you think about the advancement that he has afforded so many people of minority in America,
yeah,
you know, it's like with Jesus. It's that, you know, his sacrifice led the way for others to see what they were doing wrong,
yeah,
against people who had done nothing wrong to them.
Yeah. I tell you what, for every person that has the freedom, we talk about the land of the free. We talk about the home of the brave. And I know as an African American, most African Americans, we live what it really means to be in the land of the free and the home of the brave, because it's relatively new since the Civil Rights Movement. All this stuff throughout the 60s, Jim Crow. A lot of our parents and grandparents, they didn't know what it was like to be fully free. They knew what it was like to be called an American, but they did not know what it was like to be free. And I know that sometimes people say, well, this is the greatest country in the history of the universe. And maybe it is, but it hasn't always been that way for black Americans. Even when Dr. King was doing everything he could in his power to make sure that all people were treated equal. Those words were already written into the Constitution, but it was anathema to black Americans because we were not included. And so on this day that we remember the late, great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I just want everyone to realize that freedom, it comes with a cost, and he paid the greatest cost the person could pay. And so I want everyone to keep that in mind. I do want to say this segment sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you could drive a car or you could drive a Cadillac. Big C, I just want to bring this up. I know you're down south, and I know Dr. King, a lot of the civil rights push, you would think just as mainstream, as sometimes mainstream say, okay, let's celebrate the Dr. King and the I Have a Dream speech, that's great. But just keep in mind that many white Americans never had to experience being discriminated against by their own country. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they really haven't. If you look at the plight of white America since coming to this country, I know we have a president that's talking about stopping immigration into America. America was built on immigration, whether it was voluntary or involuntary immigration into America. That is the backbone and thrust of this country.
Yeah.
When you think about the original pilgrims that came to this country, Charlton, they came here because they were in indentured service. They were let out of prisons to come to America. They were given the option to stay in prison,
yeah,
or go settle a new land.
Yep.
And this land was occupied when they got here, Charlton.
Yeah.
And those Native Americans assisted them in survival. And yet they were turned on in later years, Charlton.
Yeah.
When we look at the African Americans, they were brought here in voluntarily, Charlton.
Yeah.
And they were forced to do mass labor for nothing for decades,
yeah,
just to survive. And you look at the advancement. You know, I think about King's legacy.
Yeah.
And, we had this last presidential election where they were talking about illegal voters and people voting that weren't from this country and weren't registered to vote.
Yeah.
There was such an outcry to keep people out of the polling booths prior to King getting the Voting Act signed by President Johnson back in '64.
Yeah.
That they wanted to omit minorities from voting. They did not want to give them a voice.
Yeah.
Just like in slavery, you didn't want slaves to read because you wanted to challenge that they were unintelligent.
Yeah.
And you knew if they read, then they would be as intelligent as you.
Yeah. Well,
and so those things that were oppressed for years, that blacks have fought to have in America. You think about the things that occurred the year that Martin Luther King died, Charles.
Yeah.
You had UCLA winning a national championship.
Yeah.
You had the Green Bay Packers winning a Super Bowl. You had the Boston Celtics winning an NBA championship.
Yeah.
You think about the greatness of athletics in that time. George Foreman won an Olympic gold in Mexico City. Lee Evans and Tommy Hines were banned for life from the Olympics for giving the Black Power salute in solidarity.
Yeah.
Part of what King had led towards solidarity in America, Charlton.
Yeah.
That they tried everything that they could to tarnish the little black people during that time, Charlton, even though they had lost their leader.
Yeah.
A man who was nonviolent. And this is what we talk about in the show when you say nonviolence towards women.
Yeah.
He talked about nonviolence towards every human being, Charlton.
Yeah.
And that's been the main thing that white society has used to downtrodden black society in America. They've used violence.
Yeah.
We see it on the news basically every night, with some young black person being killed.
Yeah.
Back during King's Day when they used water hoses and dogs and billy clubs on people, Charlton.
Horrible stuff.
So, African Americans have advanced a lot over time. We've seen an African American president. We see African American congressmen and senators, executives in America, millionaires and even billionaires, Charlton.
Yeah.
But that's what America's fabric should be. We look at the rise of statehood in sports that African Americans has achieved, Charlton. The height of every profession in sports.
Yeah.
They've reached that pinnacle. We have African American coaches that all made the sports except for hockey, Charlton.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that that's a sport yet.
It's still a sport.
But, when we look at where we have gone to, and a lot of that was led to by Dr. King.
Yeah.
When you think about the early entry into the NBA, Spencer Haywood challenged the courts a year after Dr. King died, Charlton.
Yep.
And was able to get early entry into the NBA, an African-American man.
Yeah.
He created this early entry that all the players have a chance to enjoy now, Charlton.
Yeah.
But, Dr. King, his reach continues every day that we wake up and we look at America. Because we have a man in the White House right now saying that we want to take things back to where they were before Dr. King.
Yeah.
Made his famous push for equality in America.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where our White House wants to go back to. Jim Crow mentality.
Yep.
But because of the legacy of a man like Dr. King, even all America fights back against that now. Not just one sector of society. All of America pushes back, except for his 30% base who believe in Jim Crow.
Yeah, and I think that if you think about the opportunity for the African American, whether you're a sportscaster, a newscaster, a comedian, if you have any type of access to airwaves, there's so much that was unavailable during the days that Dr. King was marching for all of us, for all people. And for every sports show, I'm surprised there are a lot of them that did not mention anything about Dr. King. They went right into the Masters because our society praises being intellectually vapid. Yeah, we like sports. In fact, we love sports, but we don't love ignorance. And for so many of our major networks, not even to pay homage to one of the greatest human beings that's ever lived in the history of the universe and respected worldwide, I just want to say on the Big C Sports Show, we'll never just be that dumb sycophant sports show telling you who won a game. And for all the young black and white kids and kids of every ethnic group all over the planet, I just hope that everyone will start realizing there were young kids that organized, I think, 800,000 that marched on Washington because of what happened down with the massacre down in Florida. And just keep in mind that Dr. King marched before all of us started marching. He made it popular to march and talk about nonviolence. And because he gave such sacrifice, every person of color especially has access to the airwaves now. We have access to living in any neighborhood we want to live in. We have access to becoming multi-millionaires now. Access to different industries that have always been anathema to black Americans. So I just want people, even if some of the mainstream sports broadcasts won't acknowledge it, we will always acknowledge the sacrifice that the great late Dr. Martin Luther King gave. Big C, I know there's some things going on in the South. If you could expound on that more, we've seen more happening all around the country, but especially in the South, that's where he was born. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, in the South, you think about the celebration tonight at the Lorraine Hotel, the last place that he stayed during his lifetime, Charlton, while leading the march for the sanitation workers and delivering, his mountaintop speech the night before his death, Charlton.
Yeah.
Where he had a vision, of his demise. He knew that, Charlton. He knew something wasn't right.
Yeah.
But when you think about the progress of the city of Atlanta, which was his home and native city, how it is advanced in the southern region of the United States, one of the more progressive African-American cities in the United States.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was led by the King legacy because of things that he fought for and his followers fought for in that region of the country, Charlton.
Yeah. Yeah.
To open up opportunities to increase wages for African-Americans, Charlton.
Yeah.
When you think about Atlanta's had more African-American mayors than any other major city in America.
Yeah.
That's because of the King legacy. When we look at the advancement of the city of Atlanta now, especially with its sports, I mean, they built a new football stadium last year, the Mercedes-Benz Dome. The year before that, they built a new baseball park, Charlton.
Yeah.
They hosted the Olympics in '96. And all of those things, Charlton, was a huge African-American presence.
Yeah.
As far as participation, getting the negotiations done. When you think about it has the world's busiest airport, this is a city that was the home of Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
All of these things are his legacy. And even in all city contracts, Charlton, a percentage of them are required to go to minorities. Not like the NFL that you have to interview.
Yeah.
That you have a quota.
Yeah.
That it has to be minority-owned business.
Yeah.
You can't say, well, we interviewed 3 minority-owned businesses, but we hired the white business.
Yeah.
It doesn't make that cut.
Yeah.
In the city of Atlanta, the home of Dr. Martin Luther King. And I think if all of the nation could take something from that, Charlton, that minorities get a percentage of every city contract.
Yeah.
Then when you're talking about equality in a country, that's the only way that you're going to get it, Charlton, that it becomes local government mandates.
Yeah.
And when you look at anything, anywhere in the world, Charlton, unless you have government mandates that allow minorities to have a part, when you look at certain cities in America, Charlton, there's never any minority contracts that are doled out. And we see that mainly, even when we look at professional sports.
Yeah.
The government of the NFL had to mandate at least minorities get an interview. They didn't say you have to hire them.
Right.
They just said you had to interview them.
Window dressing.
Okay, and we know that a lot of times that's a farce, especially this last year.
Yeah.
When 3 coaches were hired before seasons were over.
Yeah.
And so how could you interview somebody and you say, it's coming out in the news, this guy's going to be the new head coach of this organization?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you said that you buck the rule, you'll pay the fine regardless. And still all professional leagues, Charlton, say that a certain percentage of their managers or coaches have to be minority. It will still be limited as far as they go. We look at college athletics.
Yeah.
I believe there was 8 to 12 African-American coaches in Division I football last year, Charlton.
Yeah.
Less than 10% of the coaches in college football are African-American.
Yeah.
Yet when we look, and it's about 65% 75% of the players in Division I level that are African Americans.
Yeah.
That's a huge divide as far as social understanding of the athletes, dealing with their social structure, their ethnic background, where they were brought up, how they were brought up, Charlton. You have to be able to communicate in life. It's like in a relationship. Unless you have someone that understands you, you shouldn't get married to them.
Yeah.
And so that's how it should be in athletics. You need to have people that can communicate. You think about it, if you brought a lot of white kids, say you're a traditional African-American university.
Yeah.
A traditional African-American black college that they have in the South. And 90% of your roster was white. And they called from the suburbs in the Northeast.
Yeah.
You think that socially and structurally they're going to understand everything that goes on with that campus and that program? No, they won't. Even though they're athletes, Charlton, they're still going to have that separation anxiety of people who understand them.
Yeah, and so that's, I mean, I just think, and I'm so grateful that we had someone like Dr. King, who is really the prodigal father of this country, because no president before Dr. King created the civil rights movement where we had the right to vote, we had the right to live where we want to live. No president had done that, not even Lincoln. And we know Frederick Douglass helped craft the Emancipation Proclamation, but there was no fairness even with our great presidents. Our founding fathers said they left it so that we could create a more perfect union. But to have a man, think about what Dr. King was up against. He was up against this cronyism, colonialism, imperialism. He was up against racism, social enmity, the power of law enforcement. Imagine when you want to have the right thing happen for any society, that you're faced with police dogs and fire hose by law enforcement, not by some thugs, but by law enforcement. That was the mentality of our country back then. And in some facets of the law, it's still that way. It's just more clandestine. So that's why a kid can get shot 22 times in his grandmother's backyard, and people say, well, maybe he was doing something wrong. Yeah, using his cell phone. So the Dr. King, he had his, I guess you can think what people don't want to talk about, Malcolm X. Malcolm X was a believer in Dr. King, but they saw the world in two different ways. Dr. King, he was more egalitarian. Let's be peaceful, because he knew you couldn't fight the army. But Malcolm X thought more like the white man in our society, to take things by force, an eye for an eye, don't turn the other cheek. That was Malcolm X's mythology. And so even the country was behind having African Americans galvanized behind Dr. King, because he had this movement that was get hit on the face and turn the other cheek, and let's ask Jesus to forgive them. Malcolm X, he was the antithesis of that. He was like, if you hit me, I'm going to hit you back. And he learned that from white society. So what would it have been like had, just to be honest, had Malcolm X's view of treating people the same way you get treated, with black Americans were treating whites the way whites were treating blacks, Big C, we would have had a lot more chaos in this country, even though later in life he opined that he had more of a peaceful intent about him too, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, we had that when we had the Black Panther movement, and we did have the Muslim movement with Malcolm X.
Yeah.
The way that the police and law enforcement came back against that, Charlton, is that they assassinated people.
Everybody,
They would kill people. They would go in and bombard a place of dwelling.
Yep.
And just shoot up whoever was inside.
Yeah.
That was the way they fought back. I mean, when you look at it, I have to go to Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah.
When people saying that he was disrespecting the flag and disrespecting the military because he was asking for equal justice and equal rights.
Yep.
That's the same thing that Dr. King was asking for.
Yeah.
He was asking for equal justice and equal rights. So was that disrespecting the flag and disrespecting the military when he said, we are Americans, we are born here, we deserve the rights of every living being in this country?
Yep.
And we saw newsreels, which white America really opposed, that the news got involved. Because they were able to hide what they did until television.
Yeah.
The invention of television exposed white America for what it was, being a heinous criminal. Now, if black people had to behave like white America was behaving towards black people at the time, what would have been America's outcry?
I understand.
That these are animals and savages.
Yeah.
But whites were able to operate under the auspices of saying that we are protecting our country.
Yeah.
At what point were black Americans not citizens?
Yeah.
I mean, and this, what we saw in those early newsreels from the 60s,
Yeah.
with African Americans, as you said, being attacked by dogs, water hoses, beaten by police in the street for just having a peaceful demonstration.
Yeah.
Doing nothing wrong, had not committed a crime, had not attacked anybody, but the police felt it was fair game to go out and assault these people.
Yeah.
And it was okay by white society. We still see remnants of that today, Charlton,
Yeah.
in American society, with young African Americans being shot. And, you know, I look at the kid down in Florida where they shot up Stoneman High School.
Yeah.
He lived. Police just, you know, searched him, cuffed him, put him in the car peacefully.
Yeah.
He wasn't hit with a stick. He wasn't tased. He
No.
wasn't kicked. He wasn't bit by a dog. He wasn't shot. But he was put in a car.
Yeah.
I go back 3 years ago with the Dylan Booth who shot up the church in South Carolina.
Yeah.
When the police pulled him over the next day, his car had a loaded weapon inside.
Yep.
Okay? They didn't shoot his car up. They didn't shoot him. They got him out of the car. They searched him. They cuffed him up. Stopped him by Burger King so he wouldn't go to jail hungry.
Yep.
And you know, treated him like a human being.
Yeah.
Even though he had just assassinated 9 black people, Johnson.
That's
And
true.
injured others. And so I look at the injustice and the indifference on how society treats each other, Charlton.
Yeah.
And white America gives white America a pass.
Yeah.
Even when they commit heinous crimes. I can go back as far as Timothy McVeigh,
Yeah.
blowing up the Murrah Center in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
You know, and the first thing they wanted to say was a terrorist act. When they found him, Charlton, they didn't shoot him.
No.
They just cuffed him up and took him in.
They sure did.
Let's go back to the Unabomber, who was sending packages of mail around.
Yeah.
And they found him in his cabin. All they did was cuff him up and took him in. But the amazing part is that African Americans get shot, and they don't commit the heinous crimes that white assailants do.
Yeah.
Where they kill multiple people.
Yeah.
And they say, well, you know, he surrendered peacefully.
Yeah.
Well, because you didn't pull the trigger. So, yes, it was peaceful.
Yeah.
But African Americans, you never give them the chance to say they surrendered peacefully. And this has been the trait of white America throughout the history of blacks in America.
And
is that you will kill a private citizen,
Yeah.
you will kill an athlete, you will just kill a black person to do it, seems like.
And for people who are afraid to bring up the truth, and we say, well, let's just fill them full of sports. Let them watch sports. In fact, let's have them watch comedy. Let's make them laugh a lot so they don't realize what's really going on in this country. And we love sports, and we love this country. But for Dr. King, he would feel, I mean, I can't speak for him, but I'm just based on his life. He would be ashamed that he did so much for people who said, hey, who won the game last night, Big C? Man, could you believe the Yankees got a big win today? Oh, my God, did you see how that game, how many people got drafted in the NBA draft last year? You know, who's going to win the World Series this year? He didn't give his life for that. He gave his life for intelligent people. You know, we say it's important for all of our young people to understand the Bill of Rights and to understand the original 13 colonies, the original 13 states, Connecticut, New Hampshire, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Virginia, North Carolina.
The Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
What happened to life, liberty, and justice for all? When you speak about that, it's like there's life, but there's not liberty and justice for all, Charlton. There's not. There's an injustice in this country. It's like when we look at this opioid epidemic that they have now, and it's amazing when it's a white problem, it's an epidemic.
Yeah.
I can never understand that. When there was, you know, when they looked at marijuana and things like that, crack,
Yeah.
they said, you know, drug addicts.
Yeah.
Because they said it was likened to the inner city. But now that this opioid drug addiction is going on in America, where 166 Americans are dying every day in America.
Yeah.
And at least 150 of those are white. So we have an epidemic because white people are dying.
Yeah.
I never understood that. And, you know, the president said that there should be the death penalty for drug dealers.
Yep.
All right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if he's always intelligent or clairvoyant about what he's talking about. Because the drug dealers of opioids in America are the pharmaceutical companies.
Yep.
Okay?
Yeah.
They're owned by rich, wealthy, white Americans.
Yeah.
And the distributor are the people who are giving it to the pharmacies.
Yeah.
Okay, the salespeople. So we have a whole tier, different levels of white drug dealers in America that are white people.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to prison. Everybody's saying it's an epidemic and you got to get them treatment.
Yeah.
But we won't see the prisons being overrun with white drug dealers because they're not going to put each other in prison.
Yeah, that's true. And, you know, for our young brethren, we just saw Villanova win a national championship. But I'll go back to making this point because I think it's a salient point. We think about what's important to this country. And you think about the original 13 states. There was Connecticut, New Hampshire, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Rhode Island, Maryland. When we hear those names now, we think what university came from that state. What university has a great basketball or football team in that state? And I'm saying for black Americans, we got to know where we came from. And for our white brethren too, we don't ever want to go back to the past. So in order to not repeat the past, we got to know what happened. And our country will get stronger because we talk about it. But there's a lot of pain that has gone on in our society because a lot of young kids don't know how to express themselves because they don't know they should know anything other than who won the game. So I'll never be that kind of a sycophant station. And I just appreciate people that read. Make sure you read. All of us have to read. Dr. King read. He was very well read. But I want to get your thoughts on one thing. He also loved sports, but he wasn't just a sports guy. And what I would hate to see happen, which is what I think has happened to a majority of our young black American athletes, and maybe it's a fallacy that I say this, but a lot of people, when I talk to a lot of young people, there's a lot of hope because they can Google what's important. But let's get past who won the game and who's our favorite athlete and can some guy win the Masters when they're already changing the census to ask where you're from, are you American, or you're a naturalized citizen, and when you mark other on your census, that's considered that you're Caucasian. A lot of people don't know that because the census is more important than who won the game. Big C, what would Dr. King say to our young athletes that have one shining moment and they win a national championship game for the white institution that gets all of the money? You can Google that. What would he say during that one shining moment that life doesn't stop here at cutting down the net? Educate yourself. Become economically empowered, not a sycophant. Big C, your thoughts.
Look, Charlton, you have to look at the young African-American athletes during Martin Luther King's time. They became advocates. You're thinking about Jim Brown, Lou Alcindor, Bill Russell, Stokely Carmichael, great athletes of that era.
Yeah.
You know, Lou Brock, Frank Robinson. These athletes followed him. Hank Aaron,
yeah,
Willie Mays. These young African-American athletes, you know, thought that Dr. King was the truth,
yeah,
which he was, Charlton. Oscar Robertson,
the GOAT.
We looked at it across the ledger at every major sport that African Americans participated in. Cassius Clay.
Yeah,
they all believed in Dr. King's mission and lesson.
Yeah,
and they followed him. Tommy Hines, Lee Evans.
Yep.
These young men believed in what Dr. King was saying.
Yeah.
And they were living the way that he talked about, the advancement of the culture and the race. Not just play the sport,
yeah,
but take the sport and let the sport work for you.
Yeah.
And you saw their activism, Charlton, not just as players, but as spokespersons in their communities.
Yeah.
They got out. They became more than just that Laura Ingram says, dribbling the ball.
Yeah, sit up and dribble. Yeah. Yeah.
They were not just that, Charlton.
Yeah.
They were emboldened and empowered by the leadership's message of Dr. King.
Yeah.
And that's why we have so many strong African athletes today.
Yeah.
Because we remember some of those early messages, like when I spoke about Spencer Hayward.
Yeah.
Going out, challenging the establishment, saying that you cannot oppress young black players from being able to earn a living, Charlton.
Yep. Yeah.
He fought against the NBA, the largest basketball establishment of the time.
Yeah. I tell you what, when we talk about...
And allowed African Americans to enter the NBA and earn a living at an earlier age than what had been established, Charlton.
Yeah.
And that opened up the free agency in all sports. We think about Kurt Floyd in baseball, taking a stance against Major League Baseball, saying that you do not own us.
Yeah.
Jim Crow is over. We have the freedom to seek out employment with whichever team we want. You're going to give us free agency, the right to negotiate on our own.
Yeah.
These were created by the legacy of Dr. King. When you think about the free movement in sports, that came from Dr. King because he said every American should be able to be allowed to move about with freedom, without oppression, employment that they so desire and are qualified for, Charlton. That's all part of Dr. King's movement.
Yeah.
It wasn't just for voting. It was for having the right to live and work where you desire, Charlton.
Yeah.
Dr. King led the legacy for that.
I think that's so important. I do want to say that sports is a billion-dollar industry, and boys and girls sports is the foundation to this billion-dollar industry. And for every athletic and sporting event, you need athletic and event insurance. We work with Ben and Mark. They've been around half a century. They work with Big C Sports, whether you're a pro team, a collegiate team, a high school team, or your mom and pop soccer leagues. When you reach out to them, let them know Big C sent you at 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. And I just want to make sure that I know there's a lot of people that love sports, and I want to just take about a 30-second moment to say there's no Canelo Triple G fight coming up. We know there was some dirty meat going on, but you can follow Tiffany Kanoma. She's the MMA 4-1 record in the strawberry weight division. She fights April 14th in the King of the Cage in Oroville, California. She's a Canadian flyweight champion. I want to thank her for following Big C Sports, and she's a great fighter coming up. But Big C, I gotta just say to all my brethren that love the sports business, and as black men, for the ones who are out there on a TV or radio program, and you have a program director that thinks so little of you, they jump right into we lost Dr. King 50 years ago. We hope that everyone will realize that Dr. King had a dream that we all get along. And hey, let's get back into the sports now. Well, shame on you, because that's always happened to black Americans. We've always been told, just shut up and dribble. Don't be intelligent. That offends some people. They get nervous. But for the people who are fair and decent, understand that even if you look at the civil rights movement, there were black and white that marched with Dr. King. It wasn't just black Americans. And I hope through that whole diaspora of people that we can move that into the employment segment. And I know there are people who say we want to make America great again, and we want to build this wall to do whatever we want to do to isolate people. We don't want to do that. That's anathema to what Dr. King preached. I just hope that the young people appreciate that every time you can go anywhere you want to go, into any restroom, any restaurant, if you want to get on a bus, you want to sit where you want to sit. You want to go apply to buy a house or a car, you can do that now. Dr. King gave his life for that. Not so you can know who beat who in the baseball game. Big C, I think our young people are under that. How can we reach out to our media brethren, black and white, to have them understand that it's more than just a 30-second soundbite? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I don't know if everybody is on to that. If you think about 55 years ago in America, it was 5 years prior to Dr. King's death, what you said was not able to be done. Anybody who has a grandparent, or even a parent that's old enough, ask them who did they see on the nightly news, local or national nightly news. They did not see an African-American face, Charlton.
No.
Not unless he was being held by the police.
Yep.
That was it. They didn't see him delivering the news. They were not afforded that opportunity, Charlton. When we look at these national sports broadcasts now, we look at all the African-Americans who participate, Charlton.
Yeah.
As far as delivering the information. There was never any delivering even the local sports, Charlton.
Yeah.
Not just the national, just the local.
Yeah.
This is all part of the Dr. King legacy, Charlton.
Sure is.
And so when we ask these people to sit back and think, how did they get to where they are today?
Yep.
And they'll say it's through hard work and education.
Yep.
Look at the school that you go to now. 55 years ago, you couldn't have gone to that school.
Amen.
That was part of the fight of Dr. King's legacy. We look at integration of college athletics now, Charlton.
Yep.
That was all of part of Dr. King's legacy. When you think about the first all African-American team to start, Texas Western in 1964,
Yeah.
to win a national title, Charlton, that was right in the heart of the civil rights movement, Charlton.
Yeah.
You know, the El Paso the Tulsa 14,
Yeah.
football players.
Yep.
That was part of the King legacy, Charlton.
Yeah.
And so when people start to think and take things for granted, that they should just be given it, they worked hard and they got to where they are.
Yep.
You ask your grandparents, how hard did they work? What opportunity did they get for that hard work that they had until Dr. King and others like him, Medgar Evers, came along and said we just cannot tolerate this being done to our people any longer.
Yeah.
They work hard. They deserve their part of the American dream.
I agree.
You cannot divorce them of that.
I agree
So
very
our
much.
young African Americans who have excelled in society over the last 50 years, because of the sacrifice of Dr. King, pay homage to this man.
Yeah.
Pay the respect that he deserves, because he created these opportunities for you, I, and everybody else, Charlton,
Yeah.
who have a black voice in America.
Yep.
And we shouldn't try to abuse it or think that it just came to us. Because I am very honored to know without what he had done, and I remember very vividly the day that he passed and he lost his life, Charlton.
Yeah.
It was a black moment in America. And I don't mean because of his color. I mean because this nation showed what it was once again by assassinating someone who meant people no harm, Charlton.
Yep.
Meant people no harm.
Yeah.
All he wanted was equality, sharing, and love in this country. That's all he asked for. But we have so many racist and bigoted people in this country that still today do not want that. And it's led by the leadership in our country who says, we only want people in here from white countries with education. Every country in this world, Charlton, has universities
Yeah.
and educated people.
Yeah.
So to say that you only want people from Sweden and Finland
Yeah.
to come to this country because they make this country better, that's the stupidity that has always held America apart.
Yeah. And so you got to call it out. I know a lot of people are afraid to because they don't live in the land of the free. They're not even free in their own mind. You know, freedom of speech is free. And you can Google it if it's slanderous or not. So we got to do that to keep everybody honest. I want to pay attention to something before we get into the Masters. And, you know, I appreciate, number one, the fact that so many people contribute to equality in this great country, men and women, black and white, you know, irrespective of what your religion is, your political affiliation. We all are very honored that we have people who came before us that were prescient enough, like Dr. King, to do the right thing. And people say, well, now's not the right time or it's uncomfortable. How uncomfortable do you think Dr. King was? JFK wouldn't even bail him out of jail. The great late Billy Graham bailed Dr. King out of jail. He was a white man because he stood on the side of justice when President Kennedy wouldn't even step up, and he's canonized as a saint. So just because someone is white or black doesn't mean they're good or bad. One white man wouldn't do something for King, who tried to bring our whole country together, and another white guy did. It can be the same today. I know there's a lot of good people doing a lot of good work for equality behind the scenes. But I want to bring something up because sports will galvanize our society. And I know that we're all hyped about the Masters, this golf tournament, a tradition like none other. Why is that? And we talked about Dr. King. Do you know who won the Masters when Dr. King was assassinated? It's a good old boy by the name of Bob Golby. It was a 32nd Masters back in the day in 1968. And it was his only major. Now, the Masters was anathema to what Dr. King stood for. It was totally anti-black. And not much has really changed. There's a few, Condoleezza Rice, that, I mean, she's a very powerful individual. But what I think the Masters is missing, and this is not for sycophants people who just want to see who's going to win the majors or not. Whether Tiger wins or not, don't care. I pulled for him because he's an African American, and I think about what the whole society has put African Americans through, whether you're verbal or silent about it, okay? But who really cares who wins the Masters? The Masters is in a position to do one of two things. They can continue to perpetuate the racism and division and segregation that them good old boys down south were proud of, Big C. They also can do the antithesis. They can atone for the sins of segregation, and at the time they would only allow black Americans on the course as holding the bag. The caddies, they didn't allow you to play. So I know Lee Elder made some way back in 1975, and we know that helped a lot to open up doors for people. And we know Tiger Woods became the first African American to win in 97, and that set the world on fire because it was still a sport that was antithetical to black Americans. Big C, what could the Masters do other than just trying to hide the fact that they've been one of the most segregationist golf playing communities in the universe? What could they do to come out and say, how can we fix our ills other than trouting out Jack Nicklaus, who's been a great golfer, and I know he's done a lot behind the scenes, but even he could do more to make some of the bridges that Dr. King tried to build shine brighter. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Masters is the emphasis of Jim Crow, Charlton. They're not going to change their ways. It is part of that bastion of white society that feels they're entitled. This golf course is what it is. Tiger Woods broke down some barriers, broke down some records, but they're not going to give up, Charlton, that hollow ground that they hold. They feel that that's their part of history that they don't have to share. And they're not going to open their doors because of the people that are there and that have been there are the founders. And as long as Jim Crow exists in that state, Charlton,
yeah,
that's what many Americans don't understand. Look up Jim Crow. It still exists.
Yeah.
Many Americans think it don't. You know, but Jim Crow still exists in over a dozen states in America.
Yeah.
And that's where you're allowed to pay someone below the national minimum wage.
Keeping them poor.
And depending on the type of employment they have, you can pay them as little as $2.30 an hour.
Yeah.
Now, you're in California, and you're a waitress or a waiter. Would you accept a $2.30 wage because you make tips? The state of Washington, would you accept that? Would you do that in New York? Would you do that in Texas? You have to look at the mindset of the government of a state, Charlton.
Yep.
And that's led from the governor of the state that allows that because he will not vote that out. If the governor of these states, these Jim Crow states, change the finances of the states,
yeah,
then places like the Masters would change.
Yeah.
But as long as the government doesn't change, Charlton, in the state capitals, and Atlanta is the state capital of Georgia,
yeah,
as long as that governor doesn't change laws, the Master maintains what it is.
Well, that's very poignant, and I love the fact that we could talk about this, and I appreciate everyone who's decent, no matter what your color, no matter what your religion. So it's not a fallacy to say, to Google the history of our country and how we've treated certain people. And the reason I'm such a strong advocate for our Mexican-American brethren is because I see them being attacked daily by POTUS. And mainstream says not a lot to defend that garbage. I mean, they say nothing to say, well, the president is wrong other than a small soundbite. But can you imagine when someone was saying something so egregious about black Americans, for a long time the world turned its back. That's why Jim Crow lasted over 100 years when slavery was abolished in 1863 and fully ratified in 1865. The world stood by and watched Jim Crow happen. The apartheid for America. They didn't do anything. It took black Americans to, like Ronald Reagan said, pull ourselves up by the bootstraps. But they left it up to us to do it. That's another reason I'm so proud of Dr. King and Marcus Garvey and so many other great people throughout the days. But I just hope that in today's time, when we look at sports galvanizing our society, we have the owner of the Sacramento Kings, Ravek Ranadive, and he mentioned how the Sacramento Kings organization will do what they can to bring our communities together with the tragedy that happened in Sacramento. And a lot of owners can come out and do the same thing, but a lot of them don't. They stay silent. But I would hope that the Masters, I know Billy Payne stepped aside. He had some negative things to say about Tiger. When people looked into the private life of Billy Payne, they didn't live much different, Big C. You can Google that. So everybody says, well, let's use someone as a paragon of virtue and then tear them down. But I think the Masters, and maybe they don't care, but if they cared as much as Dr. King cared, they could at least talk about equality. Because them same good old boys that own NFL teams and won't hire Colin Kaepernick because he stood up against racism, a lot of them good old boys can get memberships at the Masters. This would be a great time for them to shout down that behavior unless they tacitly consent to it. Big C, that's not too much to ask. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it is a lot to ask. I mean, it's nice to think highly of people. But those people that you think so highly are the ones who fight against the change.
Yeah.
It's easy to give someone praise when they're successful. But they don't want everybody being successful with them. When you look in a gated community, the reason why it's gated is because they have a limited number of homes that are in them.
Yeah.
Okay? That they want to make sure that they can control the flow of traffic inside, that their neighbors, that they meet a certain standard and criteria.
Yeah.
No one in America seeks out equality. As much as they've talked about that in the Bill of Rights or any other thing, whether it's on the news or whatever program, there's nobody in America of power seeking equal rights for all. Because it's just like with Jim Crow, where you can pay someone as little as $2.30 an hour in the state of Washington, where Seattle is. The minimum you can pay somebody is $15 an hour working the same job, Charlton.
Yeah.
So when you look at the mindsets of different regions in this country, and you telling people that you should be able to survive on that, whether someone tips you or not.
Yeah.
You know, you think about these caddies that are at the Masters, Charlton.
Yep.
They are tipped by the golfer that they're carrying their clubs for.
Yeah.
10% of his purse, Charlton. So if he wins the Masters, his caddy's going to get $140,000.
Yeah.
If he comes in whatever place where he makes $23,000, Charlton, then his caddy's going to make $2,300.
Wow.
But that's how it is, Charlton. They get 10%.
Yeah.
And you're telling me that people are guaranteed, and I know people listen to our show. Everybody doesn't tip when they go somewhere.
Nope.
They got to think about it. Oh, I didn't tip. You know, I thought it was included. There's a lot of places. I remember when I played ball.
Yeah.
We were in a restaurant one time, high-end restaurant.
Yeah.
And there was a guy, and he had played at a Southern university.
Yeah.
And ironically, it was Mississippi State.
Yeah.
And it was three of us out for dinner. And so he looked at the meal, and we were in a French restaurant, and he asked who wanted the gratuity.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and so it was something, and Mississippi's a Jim Crow state.
Yeah.
So he wanted to know who wanted the gratuity. And myself and the other teammates, you know, sit there and say, don't worry about it, we got it.
Yeah.
You know.
That's funny, Big C. Yeah, a lot of guys don't want to tip. That's what the gratuity is, Big C. But we know it's all fair in love and war. I know we got through March Madness, and we talked about getting paid. And Dr. King, you know, he was about helping people get paid. That's a part of what the strike was about, and the bus boycotts and all that stuff. And not much was said by Villanova and how we can take the time to right the wrong. We can fix the wrong. Jay Wright didn't mention about righting the wrong. He just mentioned about I'm proud of our boys for playing hard and making me even more wealthy, Big C. So congratulations, Mr. Wright. You got the money. And for you kids, I'm sure he's going to give you something for the holidays. So I just want to bring this up before we get off on the Masters. Tiger Woods, obviously, going for his 15th major. This would be his 5th Masters championship if he should win it. And I just think about how miraculous it's been for him. Just think about it. Tiger Woods won his first Masters in 1997. Dr. King passed in 1968. So you're talking 29 years, Big C. And I know that a lot of pressure was put on Tiger to represent the quote-unquote black race even though he says it's combination because he wants to honor his mother, and people chastise him for that. But should he have any more pressure on him than them good old boys down south that won't talk about the oppression that they still tacitly consent to? I think that's a shame, because it shows to lack of character, because it's really something that would really go a long way in showing the entire country, the entire planet, how decent America really is. I mean, they've already seen that example from white Americans, and we just lost a great president. The gentleman that just evangelist just lost him, Billy Graham, and he proselytized with diverse groups. Not even the masters would do that, Big C. So I would hope that for our white brethren, the decent ones, not the ones who don't care, but the decent ones, be prescient enough to send a more clear message in the future to the young people about inclusion. It's a good thing to be inclusive. It's a good thing to be non-discriminatory. Big C, I would hope that would be to happen. Do you think we have, on a scale of 1 to 10, will we see that on a scale of 1 to 10? Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, let's start at 0, Charlton. We won't even go to the 1.
Okay.
We think about this today. Today is the 50th anniversary of the death of Dr. Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
Today was the Part 3 championship at the Masters.
Yeah.
Dr. King was not mentioned, yet this is his home state of Georgia where the Masters is being played.
I know.
But he's not mentioned as part of that. There was never a moment of silence even for Dr. King at Augusta today, Charlton.
Nope.
Well, when you look at the crowd was not represented by Dr. King at Augusta, Georgia. They can't even get in. But, here's the state where he was born.
Yeah.
Where he was laid to rest. There was not even a moment of silence at Augusta for Dr. King. So when you think about the advancement of colored people, which he fought for in America, and the equality for Americans, you think about the white women that are at Augusta today and this weekend, Charlton.
Yeah.
During Dr. King's life, they could not get in.
I know.
They could not get in. They could not go out there and walk along the fairways, Charlton.
Nope.
It was white men only. Dr. King allowed that for them.
Yeah.
But they don't realize that, Charlton.
Yeah.
They think this is just something they inherited. When you see white women in positions in corporate America today, Charlton,
Yep.
that are getting equal pay to men, Dr. King fought for that.
Yeah.
But they don't recognize that. They think it was something that just came along because of their race. No. Dr. King, when they were at the voting polls, when we saw a white woman run for president
Yep.
a year and a half ago,
Yep.
that was because of Dr. King.
Sure was.
Women got a chance to vote. Not only vote, but the whole public office, high public office,
Yep.
because of Dr. King.
Yep.
There is so much in America that is because of Dr. King. When we see female executives in sports,
Yep.
Dr. King. When we see female officials on the NBA court,
Yep.
that's Dr. King. Don't think that this was not Dr. King. His tentacles were out in so many things that allowed so many Americans to achieve.
Yeah.
But people say, well, he was only about black voting rights. No, Charlton. He was about American equality.
Human rights.
In sports.
Yeah.
In human rights. In life rights. That was Dr. King.
Yeah, and that's why I was hoping I would be wrong. I mean, sometimes you ever do something and you hope you're wrong, Big C. Like, sometimes back in the day, you did.
Yeah. It's all taking that extra shot. That's the ball shot. Yeah, I know I'm wrong.
I know I shouldn't be down here betting in Las Vegas, but sometimes I do it anyway, Big C. We know it's wrong, but we do it sometime anyway. Never bet more than you can lose. But I was hoping that with all of the apparent intelligent people in our great society, in the land of the free, in the home of the brave, with the 27 amendments to the Constitution, I was hoping that them good old boys down south, when they had their opening to the Masters, and it's all over the news, in fact, all over the universe, Dr. King's 50th from passing, for making equality happen for everybody. They didn't even mention him. It's like they don't even know who he was. They could even Google Dr. King. They didn't even do that in his home state. That's anathema. And I know for dumb people, they don't even know. They just want to know who's going to win. who's going to win the game, who's going to get the $100 million contract, and the women that say shut up and dribble, even her, sorry, but got a job because Dr. King and black people marched in the South, in Laura Ingraham. So I know some people don't see the decency of that as they go to church on Sunday and pray to a Jesus. And if you Google in the Bible, Jesus was as close to Dr. King's color as any other color out there on the planet. But I just hope that, at least for all the people who understand that we didn't get here on our own. We got here because somebody sacrificed. Somebody gave their life for all people. He was not just an advocate for African Americans. He was an advocate for everybody. And them good old boys down south didn't even take the time to have a moment of silence. That's why we still say we have so far to go. And I know all people, if you're decent, you got to at least take a moment and say, you know what? Maybe I should pay homage to a man, irrespective of what his color is, that made it possible for me to call myself the CEO of a company. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you know, we would like for America to be aware and not forget its past, to understand where its future's past is. But we are so narrow-sighted. It's like having the blinders on a racehorse.
Yeah.
Is that we always just focus on the finish line, not what obstructions there may be along the way or who we could bring along with us. Charlton.
Yeah.
And that's why America, as great as it is not greater, why we always have eternal strife.
Yeah.
Because we forget about those who are always stepped on.
Yep.
The less fortunate, the downtrodden. There's no one that fights for them anymore, Charles.
We do, Big C.
It's not.
We do.
But I'm talking about from a power level.
Yeah.
Where in American society there was a universal feeling and struggle and movement of thousands. Now those thousands are left behind, Charles.
Yeah.
Where we can be a voice, but when there's not other voices that assist the voice that we're utilizing, then those people get left in the wake, Charles.
Yeah, and we hope to bring an end to that. And, you know, we love this country. We love the fact that people can read. You think about CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality, a civil rights organization that was founded in the 40s, 1942. The Civil Rights Act, called the EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, 1964. That's back in the days of Dr. King. Now, the signing of the Constitution took place September 17th, 1787, at the Pennsylvania House of Independence in Philadelphia. Dr. King was more president than them, Big C, because he brought about equality, and I'm so proud to say that I'm an American, and especially an African American, and I'm so proud to honor Dr. King. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Bundini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man. He would always tell Ali, with all you've got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young men rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Charlton, we've talked so much about the NBA, the NFL upcoming draft, and college basketball. We have 1 week remaining in the NHL season, the National Hockey League. Those guys who run around on frozen ponds.
Yeah.
And the playoffs are going to begin, Charlton. For the first year in history, we have a franchise, an expansion franchise that's going to be in the professional playoffs, and that's the NHL. They are making history with the Las Vegas Golden Knights, Black Knights, right? That are going to be in the NHL playoff, Charlton.
Yep.
And they are a true challenge for Lord Stanley's Cup.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be ironic that an expansion team wins the Stanley Cup, Charlton?
Yeah.
What would that mean to major sports history?
I tell you what, it means that progress happens even if you're down there in the desert where they have a lot of heat and a lot of transients. If you have the hope and the support, if you build it, they will come. And speaking of building it, they will come every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide. Follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America, and Big C Sports. has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever any excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you, on every Big C Sports Show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.